My entitled brother spent thousands he didn't have expecting mom's life insurance, but there was no policy. You ever have that one family member that just drains you? Like, no matter how much you help, they somehow find a way to twist it into a bigger mess? Yeah, that's my brother Jason. And this, my friend, is how he went full nuclear trying to cash in on our mom's life insurance that never existed. Alright, so this started around Christmas 2013. You know how it is. The holidays, family drama practically writes itself. Jason calls me up, all cheerful, and says, "Hey sis, why don't you and Mike join us for Christmas dim sum? Brittany's mom Karen will be there too. ITLL be fun." Now, I should have smelled something fishy right there. Because, honestly, Jason never invites us unless there's something in it for him. But Mike and I didn't have any real plans, and hey, the kids, Ethan and Lucas, are adorable. So I figured, why not? What could go wrong? Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Dinner itself? Actually kinda nice. Everyone's laughing, eating dumplings like there's no tomorrow. The kids are having a blast. Honestly, it was probably one of the more peaceful moments we've had as a family. For about 2 hours, I almost forgot who I was dealing with. Then came the bill. Total damage? About $80 before tip. Mike and I assumed we'd split it, $30 or so each, no biggie. Jason goes up to pay with Mike while I took the kids outside to play in the cold air. 10 minutes later, Mike comes storming out of the restaurant, and this man never storms, okay? He calmly grabs my arm and just says through clenched teeth, "We're leaving." I'm like, what the hell happened? In the car, Mike explains, and honestly, my blood pressure still spikes thinking about it. When they got up to pay, Jason suddenly forgot his wallet. Yeah. Apparently, both his debit and credit cards were maxed out, and he had exactly $5 on him. Karen and Brittany instantly jumped in, accusing Mike of ruining Christmas if he didn't cover the full tap. They actually said, "You guys make more money than us. You should pay." And here's where the seed was planted. Because a few weeks later, this was just a warm-up act for what Jason would pull next, and trust me, that's where it gets wild. So, like I said, Christmas dinner? Just the appetizer. And sure enough, he calls me one night sounding all pitiful. "Hey, sis, listen, things are really tight right now. The kids don't have much for school lunches. Rent's behind. Brittany's mom is sick, so Brittany hasn't been able to work her shifts. Now, I'm not heartless. Ethan and Lucas? Those kids didn't ask to be born into this circus. And Jason knows damn well I've got a soft spot for them. He uses them like pawns. Every single time. How much do you need? I ask, already bracing for the number. $300 should cover groceries and school lunches till payday. I sigh. All right, I'll swing by with a check. But then Jason's like, actually, could you just leave it in the mailbox? I won't be home. And this right here? This was the first real red flag. But, like a sucker, I drove the 40 minutes to his place after work and dropped off the check. The next day, though, something was bugging me. I called Brittany to make sure they got the check, and man, that call flipped everything upside down. "Oh, he's not home," Brittany says. "Where'd he go?" I ask. "Vegas. For Comic-Con, remember? You said you'd help with his trip." I swear my heart stopped for a second. I'm like, what trip? I thought this was for groceries for your kids. Brittany goes, all smug, "Come on, don't be dramatic. You guys have plenty of money. Besides, this is important to him. He never gets to have fun. And anyway, he promised he'd pay you back." My blood boiled. And honestly, I probably should have gone off right there. But I just hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. Of course, a few weeks later, Jason called me again, same song and dance. "Sis, things are tight again. Can you help?" And this time, I wasn't playing nice. "When are you going shopping, Jason?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning," he says. "Perfect. I'm off work. I'll pick you up at 9 a.m. and we'll go together." Dead silence on the other end. Finally, he tries to backpedal. Actually, it'd be easier if you just dropped off cash or a check again." I cut him off. "No. Either I take you grocery shopping myself, or you don't get a dime." Long story short, he caved. I drove him to Kroger, stood there while he bought about $90 worth of groceries, and dropped him back home. The man didn't even say thank you. Just got out of the car and slammed the door. But honestly, I felt good. Because that little test confirmed exactly what I suspected. He never needed that money for groceries. He was using me. And while all that drama was playing out, something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. Something Jason had absolutely no clue about. See, after our dad passed from stomach cancer, our mom, Margaret, went to meet with Mr. Collins, Dad's old friend and insurance agent. I came home one night and found them sitting in the living room going over papers. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked. "Oh, honey, nothing to worry about," she smiled. "Just putting a little plan in place. When the time comes, you'll understand." Honestly, I didn't think much of it then. She didn't owe me any explanations. But she made me promise one thing. "Whatever you do, don't tell Jason about this. Not until the time's right." I said I wouldn't, and I kept that promise. But let me tell you, when that time came, Jason was about to walk straight into the trap of his own making. Let me back up a bit. Our dad passed away about 6 months before this whole disaster started. Stomach cancer, brutal stuff. I was the one taking care of him mostly, driving him to chemo, helping Mom around the house, trying to keep everyone sane while Jason basically disappeared unless he needed gas money or some quick cash for emergencies. And I swear to you, not once during those months did he ever ask, "Hey, how's Dad doing?" It was always, "Hey, can you float me $200? Brittany's car needs repairs," or "The kids are outgrowing their shoes." Dad fought as long as he could, but by the time the doctors said, "There's nothing more we can do," he barely made it 3 more months. After he passed, Mom tried to keep it together, but you could tell something in her broke. 40 years married, and suddenly she's alone. Jason showed up for the funeral, of course, long enough to be seen, shake a few hands, take a few sympathy hugs. Then, right after the service, while we were literally still at the cemetery, he pulls Mom aside and asks, "Hey, Mom, did Dad have any life insurance? 'Cause, with the kids and all." I was standing maybe 15 feet away when I heard that. My stomach turned. The man's not even cold in the ground, and Jason's already sniffing around for a payout. Mom just nodded politely and said, "We'll talk later, Jason." When we got home that night, Mom looked like she aged 10 years in a day. I sat down with her in the kitchen while she stared blankly at her cup of cold tea. "Are you okay, Mom?" She took a deep breath. "I'm fine, but I've seen enough to know what's coming." That's when she told me about the meeting with Mr. Collins. He offered to help me apply for a small policy on myself, she said. $50,000. Just something to cover the house or your father's outstanding medical bills, in case something happens to me too. Now, full disclosure, I didn't think she'd even qualify. Mom was diabetic, had heart issues, high blood pressure, the works. But she just smiled at me and said, "Leave it alone, sweetheart. Just promise me you won't say anything to Jason." And I didn't. Fast forward about 6 weeks after Dad's funeral, Jason goes full tilt with his next plan. He calls me late one night, like 11:30 p.m., and when your phone rings that late, it's either bad news or Jason. "Hey sis, listen, I've got something I wanted to run by you." Already my stomach's twisting. So, with everything going on, Brittany and I have been talking, and we just want to make sure everything's handled properly when Mom goes. I froze. "What do you mean?" Her life insurance. I mean, obviously she's got a policy, right? Since Dad had one, she probably got one too after he passed. He said it so casually like it was a foregone conclusion. "Jason," I said carefully, "we don't need to talk about this right now. But I mean," he pushed, "if there's a payout coming eventually, I just want to be smart about how we handle it, Like, maybe pay down some debts, set up savings for Ethan and Lucas, finally upgrade our car." He was already spending money he didn't even know existed. That's Jason for you, counting his chickens before the eggs even exist. I shut it down as gently as I could. "Mom's fine, Jason. Let's not go there." But I could tell the gears in his head were already turning. And then the real bomb dropped. A few months later, Mom passed. Heart attack and stroke, same night. Just like that, I lost both my parents in less than 6 months. I was shattered, numb. The house was dead silent except for the sound of my own breathing when I got home from the hospital with her belongings. Jason, of course, came over like the concerned son, but you could practically see the dollar signs in his eyes. We sat quietly in the car as he offered to drive me home. And as soon as we were a few blocks from the house, he couldn't help himself. "Hey, Mom had cash on her, right? The kids could really use some groceries this week." I pulled $40 out of her purse, handed it to him, and said nothing. Then he said the words I'd been waiting for. She had life insurance, right? There it was. I took a deep breath. The moment had come. Yeah, she applied for a policy right after Dad passed. 50,000. He sucked in a breath like he was holding back a grin. Wow. Okay, that's gonna help. Probably take a few weeks for it to process, right? I just nodded. Inside, I was boiling. Because what Jason didn't know was that the policy was never approved. Mr. Collins told Mom straight up she wouldn't qualify, But Mom, the sly old fox, had asked him to send her the denial paperwork directly to hold on to, just in case. She knew exactly how Jason thought. And here's where it gets insane. Over the next few weeks, Jason starts racking up debt like it's Monopoly money. New appliances. Brittany gets a fancy new iPhone. He even puts a deposit down on a Vegas trip for their anniversary. And you can bet your ass Karen was in on the spending spree too. I know for a fact he borrowed money from Brittany's coworkers, her mom, payday loan places, anyone who'd listened to his sob story. By the time the letter finally arrived from the insurance company, addressed to Mom's estate, I already knew what was coming. I opened it. First line. We regret to inform you that we are unable to issue a life insurance policy. There it was. The whole thing had been a bluff. A setup. One final play from Mom, even from beyond the grave. I called Jason that night. Hey, the insurance company sent the letter. Great. When do we get the check? There is no check, I said flatly. The policy was denied. She never qualified. Dead silence. And then, the explosion. What? Are you kidding me? How could she do this to us? I've got bills stacking up. I've got credit cards maxed out. Brittany's gonna lose her mind. Then Brittany grabbed the phone. You did this. She shrieked. You're lying. You're trying to steal from your own nephew. You just want the money for yourself. And I swear, for a moment, I was too stunned to speak. This woman was screaming at me like I killed their golden goose personally. You told Jason there was insurance. You tricked us. She yelled. Ethan, needs that money for college. And you're gonna rob your own nephew? Jason comes back on, panicking now. We're gonna sue you. You'll see. I didn't even argue. I just calmly said, you can talk to Mr. Collins if you don't believe me. He's got the paperwork. Good luck. And I hung up. A week later, my phone lights up. It's Karen, Brittany's mother. That woman had the nerve to call me directly. Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. Listen, Karen started immediately, her tone already nasty. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but you've put my daughter and grandkids in a terrible position. I bit my tongue. Karen, I don't owe you any explanation. You lied to Jason. You let him believe there was money coming. I didn't let him believe anything. I cut her off. He made his own assumptions. You should have told him from the beginning there was no insurance. And why would I? Mom asked me not to. She knew exactly how Jason would act if he thought there was a payout. And guess what? She was right. Karen's voice got even nastier. You know, you always thought you were better than them. Sitting on your little savings, living your comfortable life, while Jason and Brittany struggled to survive. At that point, my patience snapped. Let me be very clear with you, Karen. I worked my ass off for everything I have. Mike and I built our lives from the ground up without running around borrowing money and expecting handouts. Jason and Brittany are where they are because they made bad choices. Don't you dare try to make me responsible for their mess. She hung up on me. And honestly, I was glad. Because if she had stayed on the line 1 second longer, I would have said a lot worse. And then, the debt collectors started calling. Not me, but my house was listed as one of Jason's emergency contacts from some payday loan applications he filled out years ago. I got a call from one of those bottom feeder agencies one morning before work. Hi, we're trying to reach Jason Miller regarding an outstanding balance of $4,200. I stopped them right there. You've got the wrong number, I said. Is this not his sister? I sighed. I have no financial ties to my brother. Do not call this number again. Click. But the calls didn't stop completely. Turns out Jason had put my old landline, my work number, and even my husband Mike's cell phone on a bunch of his old forms. He was drowning in debt, and now his creditors were circling like sharks. Through back channels, mostly our cousins and one very loose-lipped aunt, I found out just how bad it had gotten. Jason wasn't just in a few $1,000s of debt. Between credit cards, payday loans, car payments, and Brittany's medical bills, which I highly suspect were exaggerated, they owed over 40 grand. And that was before interest started piling up. The worst part? They still kept spending. Brittany had somehow justified buying Ethan a new PlayStation for his birthday that year, even though Jason hadn't paid rent in 2 months. Karen had fronted some money for it and bragged to the rest of the family like she was some kind of hero. But every month, Jason was circling the drain faster. And you know how people like him react when they're trapped? They get desperate. They lash out. One evening, Mike and I got home from work, and I saw an envelope taped to our front door. Inside was a handwritten letter from Jason. It read, I hope you're happy. You lied to me. You let me ruin my life thinking there was money coming. If you had just told me from the start, none of this would have happened. My kids are suffering because of you. We're probably going to lose the apartment next month. You'll regret this one day. Mike read the letter over my shoulder and just shook his head. He still doesn't get it, he muttered. No, Jason never got it. He never understood that all of this was because of his decisions. He blamed everyone but himself. Me, Mom, the insurance company, even Dad from beyond the grave. A few weeks later came the final blow. Jason's landlord finally had enough. Eviction papers were served. They had 30 days to vacate. Jason called me again. This time he wasn't angry, he was pitiful. Sniveling. Sis, please. Can you help? Just this once? Ethan and Lucas don't deserve this. I'm begging you. My heart twisted. Those kids, man, they were innocent. They didn't deserve any of this. But I knew if I bailed them out again, it would never stop. I'm sorry, Jason, I said, my voice shaking. I can't. You're just like Mom, he snapped. She always loved you more. I swallowed hard. That one hit different. Because for years, growing up, I did feel like Mom and Dad favored him. He was the golden boy. But after everything we'd all been through, that ship had sailed. Jason, I said quietly, Mom tried. She gave you every chance. We all did. But you chose this. He cursed under his breath and hung up. They moved into Karen's 2-bedroom condo 2 weeks later. 6 people crammed into that little place: Karen, Brittany, Jason, Ethan, Lucas, and Karen's boyfriend. The situation was, to put it lightly, unstable. From what I heard through relatives, Brittany and Karen started turning on each other almost immediately. Fights over money, food, even who got to control the TV at night. Jason was still job hopping. Payday loans were no longer an option. Credit cards maxed out. Savings non-existent. Mike and I watched it all from a distance. We weren't celebrating, but we weren't surprised. You know, Mike said one night as we sat on the couch, your mom really was a genius. I smiled weakly. Yeah, she saw this coming. She tried to protect me from it. So let's rewind for a second. When Dad passed, and then Mom followed so shortly after, their will was pretty straightforward. Both Jason and I were to receive equal shares of the estate, mostly cash from the sale of the house, a few remaining savings accounts, and some old investments Dad had tucked away. It wasn't an insane amount, not by today's standards, but it was enough to give both of us a solid foundation. A fully paid-off starter home, clear of debt, maybe some savings left over. That was the plan, and that's exactly what I did. Mike and I used my share to put a healthy down payment on a modest house in a nice neighborhood outside Cincinnati. Nothing fancy, but stable. Paid off the rest of my student loans. Bought a reliable used SUV to replace my old beater car. And we still had enough left to build a small emergency fund. In short, we played it safe, smart, responsible. Jason, on the other hand, oh boy, as soon as the money hit his account, it was like he got drunk on freedom. First thing he did was put 10% down on a much bigger house than he could afford. One of those shiny new builds in a development that was way out of his league. Brittany was posting pictures online within 24 hours, showing off granite countertops, double sinks in the bathroom, and a backyard they'd always dreamed of. New beginnings. She captioned it. Gag me. Then came the car. Jason needed a better car for work, even though his job at the time was barely paying over minimum wage. He bought a used luxury SUV on credit, nothing too crazy brand new, but loaded enough to put him deep into a second monthly payment he couldn't afford. I watched all of it from afar, just shaking my head. Mike said it best. He acts like this money's going to keep refilling itself. Exactly. Fast forward about 6 months. Mike and I are having dinner one evening when my phone buzzes. It's Jason. Again. And I already knew. Nothing good ever comes from Jason calling out of the blue. Hey, sis. Listen, I've got a bit of a situation. Of course you do. He tells me like he's just so shocked that he's falling behind on the mortgage. Apparently, even with both him and Brittany working, they're barely scraping by. Credit cards maxed again. The car needs repairs. Ethan needs braces now. Lucas is starting daycare. It's just one thing after another, he says. I listen quietly. I've heard every variation of this same story for years. So what exactly are you calling me for, Jason? He hesitates for half a second, like he knows how it sounds, but plows ahead anyway. Well, you know, you're doing pretty well. The house is paid off. Your car's paid off. You don't really have any debt. I was wondering if maybe, just for a while, you could lend me I don't know, maybe $10,000? Just until tax season. I'll pay you back. I swear I felt my jaw physically tighten. Jason, I said slowly, you got the exact same inheritance I did. But I have a family to support. So did Mom and Dad, and they never lived like this. He got defensive immediately. You don't understand. Brittany and I just wanted to give the kids the kind of life we never had growing up. No, I cut him off, my voice sharper now. You wanted to play house. You wanted to pretend you were richer than you are. You bought a house you couldn't afford, a car you didn't need, and maxed out every card you had the second the check cleared. There was a long pause. Then the real venom came out. You always look down on us, he spat. You think you're so much smarter than me, but you just got lucky. You never had kids. You don't know what it's like to struggle. That part? That one cut deep. Because yeah, Mike and I never had kids. Not because we didn't want them, but because of health reasons I don't talk about much. And Jason knew that. He weaponized it like a blade. But I didn't let him see me flinch. This isn't about luck, Jason. This is about choices. And I hung up. A few days later, Karen got involved again. Because of course she did. Mike and I were just getting home from grocery shopping when her name popped up on my caller ID. You're heartless. She screeched before I even said hello. How can you let your brother lose everything while you sit there living the high life? I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. Karen, I live in a 3-bedroom starter house. What high life do you think I'm living? You have money. She shouted. You don't even have kids to spend it on. And there it was again, that same twisted logic. Because Mike and I were responsible, because we lived within our means, because we didn't gamble away our inheritance, we somehow owed it to Jason to bail him out. I'm not your family's personal ATM, I said flatly. Jason needs to figure his own mess out. You'll regret this. She shrieked before slamming the phone down. For a while after that call, things went quiet. It was almost peaceful, but I knew better. Sure enough, Jason had one final card to play. 2 months later, I got served. That's right. Jason tried to sue me. His claim? That I had somehow manipulated our mother into cutting him out of part of the estate. That I had lied to him about the life insurance. That I had defrauded the family and kept money for myself that should have gone to him and his kids. I sat there in my living room reading the paperwork, and I'll admit, for a brief second, I actually laughed out loud. He was desperate. Completely and utterly desperate. Mike, on the other hand, was furious. This is harassment, he said. We should countersue for emotional distress. But I wasn't going to give Jason that satisfaction. I had something better. Cold, hard facts. I turned everything over to my lawyer, the will, the life insurance denial letter, even emails and texts from Jason over the years where he begged for money and openly admitted to financial irresponsibility. Mr. Collins, bless him, even wrote a sworn affidavit detailing exactly how Mom's failed insurance application unfolded and how she explicitly instructed him not to tell Jason because she feared this very scenario. When we finally got to court, Jason looked like hell. He had lost weight, not from dieting, but from stress. Brittany wouldn't even make eye contact. Karen sat there with her arms crossed, scowling at me like I was the villain in a soap opera. The judge didn't need long. After reviewing the documents, hearing Mr. Collins testify, and seeing how airtight my case was, she dismissed Jason's entire claim with prejudice, which meant he couldn't come back and try again later. In fact, the judge even reprimanded him for wasting the court's time with such an obviously baseless case. Walking out of that courtroom was one of the most freeing moments of my life. But it wasn't really over, not yet. Because even though I'd won legally, emotionally, there was still one final chapter left to close. One evening, maybe 5 or 6 months after the lawsuit, I ran into Brittany at the grocery store. I almost turned around and walked the other way, but she spotted me first. Her face twisted up in this bitter half-smile, like she couldn't decide whether to pretend we were still family or launch into another attack. I just nodded politely. Brittany. She sighed, clearly exhausted. Hey. The boys, Ethan and Lucas, stood awkwardly behind her, suddenly quiet. They were older now, old enough to sense tension, old enough to remember everything that had gone down. House. Everything? I asked, mostly out of reflex. Brittany let out a weak laugh. Not happy. Not bitter. Just defeated. You know. We're managing. I nodded again. And then, unexpectedly, she whispered, Jason's not living with us anymore. That caught me off guard. Oh? She glanced down, almost ashamed. We separated. Officially. Couple months ago. I didn't press for details, but it wasn't hard to read between the lines. He finally burned every bridge, even with her. Later that night, I got the rest of the story from one of my cousins, who had been in touch with Karen. Turns out after the failed lawsuit, Jason spiraled even harder. He lost his job, again, after missing too many shifts, blaming stress and legal troubles. Brittany finally hit her limit trying to cover rent, bills, daycare, and groceries while Jason spent most of his days on the couch playing video games or job hunting. Karen, who had once defended him with everything she had, now referred to him as a parasite when speaking to other family members. Eventually, Brittany kicked him out. Karen refused to take him back in. And with no one left to mooch from, Jason finally found himself where none of his manipulations could save him. alone, broke, homeless. I heard rumors that he was couch surfing for a while, some friends, some shady motels when he could scrape together cash. Eventually, he ended up in a small rental room above some mechanic's garage on the outskirts of town. No job, no car, no credit left. Brittany filed for divorce about a year later. Ethan and Lucas stayed with her and Karen full-time. From what I've seen since then, those kids, despite everything, are honestly doing okay. Brittany went back to school part-time, got a better job. She struggled, sure, but at least she finally stopped defending Jason's self-destruction. In a strange way, I actually respect her for that. As for Jason, the last time I physically saw him was at Ethan's high school graduation. I went, not for him, but for Ethan, because through everything, I still loved my nephews. They were innocent in all this madness. And I promised myself long ago that I wouldn't let Jason's behavior rob them of extended family who actually cared. Jason showed up halfway through the ceremony. He looked thin, pale, like a shadow of himself. His clothes hung off him like he hadn't bought anything new in years. He sat in the back row, avoided eye contact with everyone, didn't stay for pictures afterward. He disappeared before the reception even started. And you know what? I didn't chase him. Mike and I drove home that night, the summer air warm, windows down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry, or bitter, or even sad. I just felt done. I turned to Mike and said, I think that's the last time I'll ever see him. Mike nodded. And that's probably for the best. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not helping Jason more, if maybe I should have forgiven and forgotten, or tried harder to keep the family together. But here's what I tell them. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening yourself up to endless abuse. Family doesn't mean enabling self-destruction. And love? Real love? Sometimes it means letting someone hit rock bottom so they finally have to face their own reflection. Jason never learned that lesson. But I did. And after all these years, I've finally made peace with it.